Hello, everybody, and welcome to the ConTech Exec. I want to welcome you to a new year here in 2025. I hope as exciting as ours is. We're going to get this thing kicked right off this year. Our first guest is Christian Berger. He is the president of Berger Consulting Group, well established, over 30 years in the industry, and just a recognized leader. He specializes in providing valuable insights and solutions through effective IT strategy, technological awareness, and of course, business process management. And you'll see from our conversation, he is full of information. And so I do hope you enjoy it. Now, I want you to know, such a busy person, we had to record it in a couple of different sessions. So you might see me change jackets. I just wanted to let you know that ahead of time. I just want to say that thank you for visiting with me this morning. I appreciate that. We have to break this into kind of two segments, but that's totally fine. I always enjoy talking to you. But I really did want to talk to you about, Berger Consulting Group and, what you do there, and kind of typical size of companies you work with, kind of give folks an introduction of what you do.
Sure. Well, appreciate you having me on, Rob. And always willing to participate with you in a podcast of this nature. So Berger Consulting Group's been around for about 27 years or so. We're an IT consulting firm that works with the construction industry exclusively. So all of our background, all of our experiences with contractors, we help with IT initiatives of all kinds. So we do IT strategy and assessment. We do implementation support. We do software selection, IT staffing. So really everything that helps the contractor on their journey to a better, more efficient organization is what we do, with a lot of process related work as well. So it's given us a chance to be exposed to the condition of the U.S. construction industry relative to their technology stack. And we work with, heavy civil contractors, general builders, CM, specialty contractors like mechanical, electrical, roofing, interior, and then industrial contractors. So pretty broad spectrum inside of construction.
So you see pretty much a little bit of everything when it comes to it. I just kind of as a high level, macro trends, industry, North America. What do you see a lot of where, there's always talk about how construction companies struggle with technology, right? And so technology moves much faster, and construction has a tendency to move a lot slower. So when I say macro, like high level trends that are taking hold in the industry, what do you see there?
Well, there's a couple of things there, Rob. There are trends that are occurring in construction generally that are affecting deployment of technology and technology strategy. Case in point is the labor shortage. So we have an acute labor shortage, as you are well aware, and that's causing contractors to have just immense problems staffing their jobs and getting them done on time. I would say that's increased the emphasis on HR related technology, things like career development, training, just overall self-service portals, all that stuff that helps with retention and development of people is part of that. I also feel like that if there wasn't already a push on robotics, the labor shortage is going to continue to make that a priority. It seems hard to imagine robotics taking over this industry, but I think because of the varied work and varied conditions, but I think we've seen whether it's rebar tying or brick mason or layout robots. I mean, we've seen deployment of robotics already. And I think that that's only going to increase. In fact, most conferences have, trade conferences have some kind of robotic track in them anyway, just increased emphasis there. Now, the other thing I would say, just technology-wise, we're seeing more ERP deployment. So contractors are getting off of their older client server technology and moving into cloud-based ERP platforms. And that push is going to continue, I think, as the limitations of older architecture just become more of a drag on the organization. One of the things you and I talked about at some point, I think, Rob, is technical debt. What is an organization's technical debt? And the more old legacy systems that you have that are on-prem, say, have to be managed, the more technical debt. And that becomes a drag on the organization, inability to move at the pace of the rest of competition, your peers, the marketplace. So I think that getting off of legacy ERP and into more cloud-based ERP is a trend we're going to see. You've still got, I think that there's a increased emphasis on applying technology to safety. So I'm seeing quite a robust marketplace for safety solutions. And that is even extending out into QA and QC. So field-based apps that can handle safety and QA QC. I'm seeing the payroll and HR function moving out of ERP and into its own separate platform. 10 years ago, there was no way you get a contractor to get rid of payroll because it was too uh, specific to construction, union conditions, Davis-Bacon prevailing wage. There were so many things that made construction payroll unique, as you well know. And now I think contractors, some outsource providers have developed construction-specific solutions that are maturing quickly. And so I think contractors outsourcing that payroll and HR function is another significant trend. There's others, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, and so I think that seems like a lot. I mean, you went through 4 or 5 different subjects there, whether it be, outsourcing payroll. Actually, it's taking a little bit off the plate, but then, you got to update your ERPs, get out of those legacy solutions that don't integrate. Obviously, using technology for safety solutions. I know there's big gains there for, safety measures, something like 45% improvements for companies that have employed a digital solution in their safety departments. I think that's great stuff. But this seems like a lot. And so I think that's what I was kind of talking about earlier. It's like construction has enough problems out there with technology in itself, right? It's in this transition period, but then also we're stacking a bunch of new technology onto it because we need these integrations to be prepared for future integrations. It just seems like, and then I get to the whole core competency of things where if you're an electrician and you're a project manager of an electricians or whatever, your focus is really trying to do electrical work, right? But then you
Sure.
get thrown into this game of, hey, well, we need a new project management solution here, and those types of things. And don't you find it like that's like the biggest challenge that you have is trying to get folks like, hey, we did this. It seems like we did this last year. I hear that a lot. Well, we think we just did this.
Yeah. Well, I think companies are getting a little smarter about how they select and how they deploy. Um, the demands on the organization are definitely a factor. I would say that what I've found, though, is that construction firms that are successful will take a team and implement a time card solution, a safety solution, a PM solution, and they will perfect it or at least get it better. And then they will start to deploy it to other teams in the organization. Rather than in the old days, we had this sort of uh, all in one big bang approach to implementations, and it was just overwhelming. And I think too, you've got people in the organization who don't want to be a part of an implementation. If you're going to give me a new tool, fine, but get it working right first, then give it to me and train me on it. That's the attitude. And so I think we have to focus more on sprints and staging and phased approach to an implementation. That can help quite a bit. The other thing, though, that you bring up in there is, which by the way was a good question, is IT staffing. So back 10, 15 years ago, contractors had these rather robust departments that handled servers and network and a data center
Hmm.
and client server applications that were resident there and security
In-house,
and
right,
provisioning
on-prem.
too, all the laptops. And they were that department was focused on gear, is what I would call it. Now, with all of that having moved to the cloud or at least to cloud hosting or outsource, you don't need that same group of people, but you need a different group of people that are focused on software applications, integration, reporting, data and analytics, security, um, end user experience. So, help desk. So, the IT department's probably more than any other department in the company has changed. And I
Mm.
think in order to keep pace, contractors have to get on board with that and make sure that their IT department looks like what they actually need.
Do you find that they're going to be training, like do training in-house, or those types of folks, are they developing that their own kind of skills? I know guys here go out, that we get certifications, we get them, trained in certain models and things like that. So is that a part of a new company culture where we're out there going to train and get certified, those types of things?
Well, it's interesting. There's a not, it's really not new, but contractors are getting into it now, a platform called LMS, Learning Management Systems.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing more deployment of LMS. So this is a platform. Think of it like Wikipedia, except it's all around a company's training and learning. So it can have source material from vendors, from associations, from trade groups, wherever they get it, even internal recorded videos. So this LMS is a way to centralize, organize, deploy training material. Um, and I think that the thing I want to be careful of is that I think contractors hear the term customer portal or training portal from vendors, and they think, oh, good, I don't have to worry about it now. The vendor has all this training material. Well, that material is like 101 basic stuff. It's not specific to your company. And
Right.
so I never like to rely on that exclusively. I want a contractor to build their own training material that's specific to not only that solution but also their business processes with that solution. So I
Yeah,
think
well,
that
yeah, but you look
go
at
ahead.
that though, they get into those systems. So, and I know construction guys, right? Especially if you're talking field guys that are looking for training or whatever, they'll put it off to the last minute and go, "Yeah, I'll get it. It's somewhere on here." And then the minute they can't find it, it's suddenly a problem because I needed it I need it now,
Sure. Well,
right?
yes, but I would say that a disciplined we're working through an implementation with a company right now, and the vendors involved are providing some basic training, but there's no structure to the implementation. And so I mean, we're having to help the client manage the implementation because the vendors are doing training, but that's it. And so the structure of an implementation is immensely important. And that would include things like getting people trained ahead of time. So we're not doing things like that at the last minute.
Yeah. The trainer process, finding those champions within the company. Um, I find that's a huge deal,
Yes.
because a lot of times, if you don't have, obviously, you need executive sponsorship on a software, but if you don't have those champions within, kind of the underneath level, that second level, you're going to have a real problem delivering the goods later on to get full implementation of a software,
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
right?
The executive sponsorship is key, and we won't even do an implementation without that executive sponsorship.
I wanted to get into, the always that the hype talk these days, AI, large language models, those types of things. I think it's a bit overblown from my perspective, at least right now. But I believe it's accelerating at a pace that maybe we can't necessarily predict. What have you experienced out there and kind of talking with your clients and the folks you're helping out?
Yeah, good point, Rob. I would say that I'm with you on the hype aspect of things. I think, like a lot of technology that emerges out, the hype cycle is pretty significant, and probably isn't going to meet expectations in the short term. But I like what I'm seeing. I think that there are places where it has tremendous value. Contract review, specification review, takeoff function. I mean, there's a number of places where I would say AI is being deployed now and tested. But it's just that it's testing it, seeing how it's going to work, seeing how reliable it is. Um, it's kind of like the old thing when at least when I was a parent back in the day, not wanting my children to just do math with a calculator because then they don't know how to actually do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to try AI but you want to make sure you've back checked it, and then eventually you can say, all right, I can rely on this. I think the contract review aspect is big. Um, I think there ultimately will become, I would have argued that even some of the early safety related video solutions that monitor job sites with they'll monitor the video and they can see a guy without a harness on or a hard hat or no fall protection. When you're pulling that kind of intelligence out of video and reporting it, I mean, I that seems like AI. It just wasn't labeled that back in the day. So I think there's tremendous opportunity for improvement. Clearly, the markets expect that to happen. At what pace we'll see. Construction usually lags deployment in some of these things, but I would definitely not ignore it, because I think that that might set you back further. I think that keeping an eye, trying out some things, doing some experimenting is all good stuff.
Yeah. So my thing has always been, yeah, as a former general contractor, kind of owned my own business for a lot of years and did a lot of things, money's tight. Um, and all of this technology, whether it's new, you talked about technical debt. You may have a system where, you know, the old adage was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. How do they know it's broke? And those dollars and cents that they're talking about spending. If you're a medium-sized company, again, your focus is on trying to maintain what you're doing in your profit margin, and that it's a sticky subject, right? Because there's dollars and cents that have to be allocated, but then it's like, oh, if you don't have this new whatever, it's not going to be as you're not going to be as
Well,
efficient as you can be.
sure.
Where do they draw the line? What's your recommendation on that? Is like, you know, they don't have an
Yeah.
open checkbook.
No, no, and they shouldn't really, because even if they could write the checks, they can't staff the deployments adequately. So all that would lead to is a lot of unused software sitting around. The I would say that what I look for when I go into organization are spreadsheets. And the more spreadsheets I find, the worse the condition is. Spreadsheets to me are symptomatic of an organization that doesn't have adequate mainstream systems to handle their processing needs. So they have to go offline into spreadsheets to manipulate, whether it's for reporting or billing or some process function. I've even seen, Rob, this is going to come as a shock, but there's people out there that still use spreadsheets for time card processing.
Yeah.
And so when I see that, I know I've got a problem. Here's a little tip trick of the trade, I suppose. When we evaluate a company's business processes, we evaluate their business processes on two vectors: risk and inefficiency. And we measure on a scale of 1 to 10, risk and inefficiency. And if we find that, let's say, purchasing or change orders or payroll, time card, or billing have a very high risk and a high inefficiency, that isolates that item as being very problematic and large opportunity for improvement. When you do that for all of your business processes, now you end up with sort of a graded listing, if you will, of initiatives that need to be addressed. And I always like to tackle the high risk, high inefficiency, high impact processes to start with, because I think that's where the payoff is. That's where the ROI is. And I
Right.
also would say that, like, I don't think a contractor is ever done with this journey. Like, there is technology to be applied in all kinds of areas, efficiencies to be gained, and not even new systems, just taking the systems you already have and deploying them better, or integrating two systems that really should talk, or building out your data warehouse. There's so much work to be done. So you do have to kind of measure your pace a little bit and invest properly. But the prioritization is key, and that will help the organization a lot know what they're focused on and when they can take on the next initiative.
You get a lot of pushback, and this is one of the things where I think you get into the situation of people get set in their ways, and I think that's it's almost like the moniker for construction mentality. Almost is like, we're set in our ways, this is the way we do it. Oftentimes I find when I'm working with folks, especially when they have a spreadsheet mentality where it works for them, right? And so then they're automatically expecting some new software, some new implementation to do everything that spreadsheet does, plus, you know, everything else. And I don't know. Cause sometimes I just think that what they don't understand is that they see that as technology, which at one point I guess it is, right? But it's not advancing them because it lacks integration. It silos the data.
Yep.
And of course, data is going to be the biggest thing that they're going to need in the future, because if they're not monitoring that data, they collect they collect a lot of data in those spreadsheets, and it's useless,
Yeah, yeah, it is. It
right?
is.
But getting that understanding to say, look, that data that you have in there is absolutely useless. There's nothing you can
Yeah.
do with it.
I would say that today's workers who are younger came out of school knowing systems and processes, and you don't have to convince them that a spreadsheet is bad. I think the people you have to convince are the 50-year-old estimators and the 40-year-old accounting clerks that are kind of set in their ways and have been doing that spreadsheet for 10, 15 years, and that just it's their whole livelihood. I think those are the folks that need convincing that the spreadsheet is problematic. I will tell you that I typically don't go to those people when I'm trying to bring about change, when I'm trying to implement systems, because they don't want to. They will
Right.
go along eventually when they see the train leaving the station, but they're not your champions, if you will, the front runners. So I'm always looking for young people with pretty good ambition and technical comfort with technology to push them ahead. I think that helps. That goes a long way to getting the job done.
Well, I think it goes to the thought of being competitive. If you look at an executive, I don't care if you're a medium size or a large size company, right? You have to remain competitive in this upcoming market. There's a lot of things, AI being one of them, robotics as another one, which I think you're going to get a lot of pushback on the robotics, especially in such a heavily labor driven idea. I wouldn't be surprised, quite honestly, if you saw people, damaging those products just so that there could be some funny business going on.
Kind of like the
But
Luddites.
yeah, well, it's just one of those things. I was in when I was in the union way back when. We went up to Chicago. I worked out of the Indianapolis hall, and there was some work that we had picked up a job just on the south side of Chicago, and they wouldn't let us work up there. and my tires got flatted, and they were like, it's time for you to go home. So again, there is that mentality still, and it's prevalent. It's like
Yeah.
that's not something that we want. Now, I don't know if that's will happen to that technology, but we're going to see a little bit of it. But I guess what I was getting at is this change seems to be so there's a lot that can be had from it. There's a lot of return on your investment that can be seen, but it seems like uh, not everybody has that vision. Maybe executives have a vision, but it's tough to get everybody on board. And with today's market of, hey, we need everybody's you need everybody to chime in. Does that top down method really work, or what do you need? You just need just seeds of hope inside of each one of these parts. Is that what's you look
No,
for?
no, you need more than that. I think you definitely need vision. One of the frustrations that a lot of contractors have had over the years, particularly in the C-suite, is lack of vision, lack of innovation. A position I've encountered in more than a few companies in the mid range and upper is director of innovation. So this
Mm-hmm.
is a newly created position whose whole job is basically R&D, technology, creating a little bit of enthusiasm and vision around change. Now, they don't get involved in selection, they don't get involved in deployment, but they are the ones who are out there trying new things, talking to the users in the field to see what's possible. And they're also trying to line up all this innovation with corporate strategic initiatives so you have alignment between your tech investment and the business direction. So I
Yeah,
think that can help drive that direction as well.
yeah, I recently met with and I think you know him as well, Hamza Shambari from Haskell.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so he and I have also had a conversation as well. So again, yeah, I think that is I agree with you. That's a position that has to be there. It almost serves as a kind of an intermediary. And for some of these larger groups, they've started their own kind of R&D section as well.
Yes.
I agree with you on some of these points. I just feel like I feel like there's a danger here, and the danger is that the more that we push, and I'm not talking about a project manager level. So I think there's 3 levels to uh, what I would call a construction company. There might be 4. It's kind of that pyramid structure. The bottom level, the base of it all is your field employees, the folks that are out there, working it every day, hot, cold, those types of things. And you've got that middle level, which I'll call the office, but it can include your project managers who spend a little time in the field, but spend a little time in the office. And then you got the office folks that are taking care of the administrative work, those types of things. You got that level. And you got the executive level at the very, very top of the pyramid, right? That's kind of looking toward the future, kind of rolling this stuff down. There has always been such a divide in between the field who's executing this work versus maybe even the office level and the executive level. And it's a language thing, maybe a culture thing, and it could be an integrity thing, but I think it has this idea of, we got all these folks down here working, those 9 to 5s, they're waiting for that overtime, and then you've got all these other people up here who are like, well, we need to figure a way to cut hours. We need to figure out a way not to work any overtime. We need to figure out a way to be, all this. They're trying to, take away all the things. And I say this because I remember when I was working out in the field, the way that I made my extra money was to work the overtime hours, right? And to work the night shift where you got paid double, time and a half, those kind of things, and do that kind of work. It wasn't fun, but that's how you made ends meet, right?
Sure, sure.
And so then you got this other group over here starts like implement technology so we can figure out a way how not to do any of that. And I feel I think it leaves that gap between the two. We got a set of groups that say, hey, we're trying to figure out to get them faster, better, with less hours, less time. And then you got this other group down here is like, I'm just trying to feed my family. Well, I don't know what you're trying to do. You're trying to make me work faster. So then that way, if you can reduce me on the next job, that's what's going to happen.
Well, I think that probably did exist at a point in time, and there may still be some of that, but given the amount of work that there is out there in the marketplace today for construction and the challenges contractors have keeping up, I feel like they can keep the field as busy as they need to. But they very much want their workers to go home at the end of the day, safe, not hurt, good state of mind. They're trying to create balance for that workforce. And they definitely want to figure out how to make the field more efficient, getting the work done, and improving overall productivity, which is, I think the other thing that I would point out is that I think sometimes contractors, when they deploy technology, they focus too much on how and not why. So here's a timesheet solution, here's a time card application. Here's how you enter your time. And they never spend any appreciable time showing or explaining why that's important. Hey, we use this information to bid more work. So if you don't record your time correctly, I'm not bidding accurately, we don't get new work. So I think that helping the field understand why certain practices and technologies are being deployed helps tremendously in getting them comfortable with the adoption and deployment of new technology. Another technique that I've used often in deployment is more of a staged approach. So let's take time card as an example, given your where you're from. Rather than pushing it out to 300 field workers or 50 foremen, why don't we take a team of 5 foremen, let them use it for about, 2-4 weeks, get them comfortable, smooth out any rough edges, change the UI, make sure it's working correctly, then deploy to the next team and the next team. So you gradually get it deployed. IT struggles to keep up supporting 50 devices newly deployed to the field. So, and that puts the whole project at risk. So doing a staged approach, a phased in approach can lessen the risk and improve chances for success.
But yeah, you and I are definitely going to agree on that. I've never been a fan of just, it's almost like delivering the software to your doorstep and going, here you go, have at it.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea. It's, you don't just turn it on and run with it. Right.
Yep.
It's just not going to happen. I think there's a big problem with training. You don't get enough adequate training, especially. That's why
I hear that everywhere I go.
Right. And the thing is that, again, it gets back to that core competency thing where they start talking about, well, my core competency, if you're an electrical contractor, it's not going to be working this software. Well, I get it's not working the software. I know you need to be pulling wire somewhere, but can you spend the extra hour or whatever it's going to take to get trained up on this software so it gets its maximum use? Because what they don't see is what happens with that data on the back end. And that might be the biggest point that we could probably talk about here, and things that are, and let's kind of wrap this up and get to the end of this kind of thing. But transformative tech, my idea about this would be transformative tech is probably a lot of it's in place for 2025. I think there's a lot of technology that folks have, they're just not using enough of it.
Yep.
They could use more. But what's your opinion on that? I think it's data and data accuracy. Tell me what you think for 2025 if we're going to move into that state.
Well, it's interesting. I would say that the contractors do have a tendency to get a lot of software moderately deployed, and they sort of stop after the first round and get whatever's done, and they're like, "Whew, we're done." Instead of saying, "We're done with that, let's improve that." So I think just using tools that you already have better through training, process improvement, what have you, integration is where a lot of time needs to get spent. Now, maybe not directly related to the question, but kind of symptomatic is spreadsheets. And I can't imagine you're going to challenge me on this one, but you're free to. Like when I go into an organization, it's easy for me. All I do is look for spreadsheets. And where I see a massive amount of spreadsheets, I know I have a problem.
Right.
Because what those indicate is a system or series of systems that aren't functioning sufficiently. So
Right.
if I have a time card application and then I download that to a spreadsheet, route the spreadsheet for approval, gets coded, and then imported into my payroll, what am I doing? Like that's not right. And it's not efficient. It adds risk, it adds time to a process that should be much more streamlined. So when I find large scale production spreadsheets around, I know I've got opportunity for improvement.
Yeah. Well, if you see that, what you're looking at is something that somebody's spent a lot of time developing, and they don't want to waste that whatever time they've had making those complex spreadsheets. I've seen it 1,000 times probably, where they've got this massive spreadsheet. They probably have 6 or 7 of them, right? And they all have a specific function, and they can't wrap their brain around exactly, well, how do I get past this? What application do you have? Because it doesn't work exactly the same, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so if it doesn't work exactly the same, like again, going back to the taking the time to train on it, to wrap a new idea around it, kind of give it get a better understanding of where it can lead you to, right? On the end result is going to be important. All right. Well, it's been great talking with you this morning. I know we're just about wrapped up on time here. I did want to talk to you just one last thing. Conferences this year, speaking engagements, what are you doing this year?
Well, I would say that typically I'll do a couple of CFMA regional events, sometimes CFMA national, AGC IT forum are a couple that our team spoke at Trimble Dimensions this year. So we do get around, I would say, but for the contractors, your IT person at your firm should definitely be going to AGC IT forum. As far as I know, that's the largest conference that we have in the US dedicated to IT in construction. So it's somewhere around 300, maybe a little more than that. IT directors, CIOs, IT managers from construction firms coming together, typically held in Chicago. It's typically in August, and it's a great event, couple of days. And not only is there good content there, but the networking among your peers is tremendous. So I'd say that's a good one. CFMA, Construction Financial Managers Association, that annual conference attracts a fairly substantial exhibit hall, which means all the vendors are there. You can walk around, talk to them, talk to customers, and learn more about some of the advancing technology. And they also have a good technology track. MCAA definitely on the forefront of that. Other associations are figuring out they need more technical content and are starting to add technical tracks to their conferences as well. Groundbreak is another one that a lot of people attend. Even if you're not a Procore user, you just want to see what the sort of leading companies are doing. Will attend that one. So there's no shortage of content, I would say. And if you're a contractor and your IT folks are not getting out to any of these conferences because they're too busy, I think you've got to help them change perspective there, because they need to get outside, need to see what other companies are doing, learn about these technologies so they're better prepared for what's coming.
Very good. Well, listen, I appreciate your time today, Christian. Thank you so much. And I'm going to follow up with you here in a couple of months. We're going to try to get you back on and kind of see how 2025 is shaping up for you. Does that sound good?
Happy to do it. And I appreciate you having me on, Rob. It's been a good discussion.
All right, man. Well, listen, we'll talk to you next time. We appreciate it. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you.